Welcome back, Truth Seeker. Tomorrow, Monday, January 28th, 2019, it'll be the 33-year anniversary of the NASA Challenger disaster, where the rocket exploded shortly after taking off. What I want to do in this video is talk about why they're calling attention on the 33-year anniversary, show the parallels between the disasters of the Challenger and the more recent Columbia, both NASA space shuttles. And then I want to read chapter 12 of my book, Letters and Numbers, which is about NASA and science by the numbers. So why 33 years? Again, it's the language of Gematria, which is a Masonic practice. When you're done with this video on YouTube, search for this video, Washington, D.C. Masons, Freemason Influence on America. It's a tour of the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., the Masonic headquarters for all of North America. Just before the 18-minute mark, this short little blurb about how nearly every astronaut in NASA's history has been a Freemason. And not coincidentally, Masonry has so much influence over our nation and government. Of course, NASA is a military government program. Anyhow, in this Masonic language of letters and numbers, which comes from Kabbalah, which Masonry is based in, Kabbalah has the Book of Formation, which says God created the world by merging the letter with the number with the word in the first paragraph of the text. In this language, all of these things sum to 33. And again, this is about the 33-year anniversary of the destruction of the Challenger, which took off from Kennedy Space Station. Kennedy equals 33. So does orange, the color astronauts often wear. It's the only color that sums to 33. Masonry, secrecy, federal order, they're all 33. Think about what day JFK himself was killed. November 22nd, 11 plus 22, 33. He was killed in the middle of Dealey Plaza, named after a Scottish Rite Freemason. This same tour, the building it's at, the House of the Temple, it has 33 pillars on the outside that are each 33 feet tall. The significance of 33 comes from Kundalini, which says spiritual ascension happens up to 33 bones of the human vertebrae. So the Challenger disaster, it was the 25th mission for Challenger when it exploded. Death has that gematria of 25. Let me read this reporting here from CNN, and I'll show you what's so interesting about the person that they chose to focus on. For Lieutenant General Richard Scobie, losing his father in the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger was a personal tragedy he and the families of other members of the crew have shared with the nation for 33 years. If you have ever lost somebody that you loved, it's the exact feeling, Scobie told CNN this month as the anniversary approached. I just shared my loss with the country. I think it's my responsibility to share some of that because it's part of our history. On January 28, 1986, Scobie was about to graduate from the Air Force Academy when he joined his mother and the other crew members' families in Florida to watch his father, Mission Commander Dick Scobie, and 6 other astronauts blast off aboard Challenger. He remembers standing on the roof of NASA's mission control at the Kennedy Space Center and being excited that the crystal clear sky would offer a perfect view of the separation of Challenger's solid rocket boosters. So Challenger, the disaster was January 28th, 1986. What's interesting about 28 is in Gematria, NASA equals 28, so does space, so does Mason, so does Kill. They're all 28. And there's a big parallel between this disaster and the Columbia disaster, which happened to be the 28th flight for Columbia, another 28. The Columbia mission was STS-107. 107 happens to be the 28th prime number. Military also equals 107. So with regards to Challenger, as it stated, 7 people were killed on the 28th. What's interesting about that is 28 and 7 have a mathematical relationship. 28 is the 7th triangular number, meaning if you had 1 through 7, it equals 28. So it was reported that on January 28th, when Challenger exploded, it happened at the 73rd second after taking off, the 73rd second. And remember, in Gematria, there's 4 base ciphers: the alphabetic order, the reverse alphabetic order, and those 2 orders using the rules of numerology. With regards to 73 seconds, notice Mason is 73, so is NASA, so is Sacrifice, all at the 73rd second. What are the odds? And CNN calls attention to this too, 73 seconds later. If you refer to it as the Challenger shuttle, it also has the gematria of 73. What's interesting about 73 seconds is that if you had it on a stopwatch, you'd see it as a minute, 13 seconds, 113. And the commander of the shuttle was Scobie. We just read from the perspective of his family. Scobie equals 113. NASA was established July 29th, 1958. Remember, Freemasonry equals 58, so does secret society. But July 29th, 1958, that was a date with 113 numerology. And that's the number of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Scottish 113. Again, Washington, D.C., named after the 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason George Washington. Again, this tour from the House of the Temple, the Scottish Rite headquarters, about how nearly every Freemason or nearly every astronaut has been a Freemason. With regards to Columbia, the more recent disaster, which is also centered around 28, it was the 113th flight of the Space Shuttle program. The 113th flight. What are the odds? Again, everything, excuse me, in the history of NASA's space program has been done by this code. Disasters, achievements, it continues on to this day. In the 5 years, well, now more than 5 years that I've been doing this research, I've showed countless examples in recent years of news reported by NASA by this same repetitive code of letters and numbers, which is Masonic. And again, it goes beyond NASA. Everything the federal government does that comes through our media is done and executed by this code. So, that said, let's read chapter 12 from my book. If you have not read my book, this book's nearly 800 pages long, filled with content, probably on nearly every subject you can think of, educating about this knowledge, teaching you how to do it, and showing how it's been used throughout history. So chapter 12 is called The Twilight Zone, the USA, NASA, and Science. I'm going to read this chapter. If you want to pick up this book, it's linked in the description of every video. It's on sale at Etsy for just $5. It is a digital book. It's an instant download. I left the copyright off the book so anyone can print it out. You can take it to any copy shop, have it printed. The book was supposed to be printed, but the publisher backed out. But here it is, chapter 12, The Twilight Zone, the USA, NASA, and Science. On November 24th, 1958, the pilot episode of The Twilight Zone debuted on CBS, the network who chose an all-seeing eye for their logo, a symbol quite appropriate considering the TV is about programming the mind's eye of the masses. Think about it. How many times have you heard the phrase, back to your regularly scheduled programming, while the television was buzzing? That thought aside, the name of the pilot episode was The Time Element, and it was about modern science putting a man on the moon, which we will elaborate on in relation to NASA as we progress, as well as the death of Rod Serling. Let us begin with the significance of the debut date in relation to time, seeing as how November 24th, 1958 was a date with a connection to 93, the number that symbolizes time. And just by the way, if you're new here, if you had read up to this point in the book, you'd be aware of many things that we're going to discuss, such as 93 and time. As you'll recall, the sun is said to be 93 million miles away, and the number 93 is encoded in the gematria of Saturn, the keeper of time, to the occult. Again, this knowledge of letters and numbers is occult. Masonry is occult. The people who are actually in control of our federal government are occult. To understand the way the elite operate, you have to understand occult knowledge. So November 24th, 58 was a date with 93 numerology. Saturn, just using the alphabetic order, is 93. Time, using what is known as the Frank-Bacona cipher, named after Francis Bacon, the Mason. Time is 93 in that cipher. Time in the Kabbalah cipher is also 93. Father Time also has a gematria of 93, using the reverse reduction method. The release date, this is in regards to the episode, the time element, the release date also had numerology of 35, connecting to NASA, and the creator of the show, Rod Serling, as we'll get to. The Apollo 11 mission that reportedly put Neil Armstrong on the lunar body, fulfilling the concept of the Twilight Zone debut. November 24th, 11 plus 24, 35. As in the mind's eye, 35, NASA 35, Rod Serling equals 35, creator 35. Of course, Rod Serling was the creator of the Twilight Zone. Show that forecast plans for NASA, a show that debuted in the same year NASA did, 58. In light of number 35, the Catholic Church and the Jesuits throughout recorded history have had a major influence in human understanding of the stars and heavens above, plus so much more. As we have learned, Catholic and Elohim share reduction gematria of 35, the number of significance. At the same time, the pilot episode, the time element, debuted on a date with numerology of 112, like how the Jesuits operate in 112 countries, and similar to how Vatican City was founded February 11th, 1929, a date that can be expressed as 11/2. The mathematics for the date numerology is as follows: 11 plus 24 plus 19 plus 58, 112. Theater also has that gematria of 112. Again, this is about the Twilight Zone, its debut. In light of the Jesuits, consider the name of the pilot, the time element, summing to 224, where the divisors of 84 equate to 224, and Jesuit has ordinal gematria of 84, while the Jesuit order equates to 84 in reverse reduction, and the Catholic Church sums to 84 in reduction. It reminds how Neptune was discovered in 1746, and Pluto, summing to 84 in ordinal, was discovered in 1830, 84 years later. Not by coincidence, that was the same year Disney created the character Pluto. Also not by coincidence, it was the only planet discovered by an astronomer in the United States of America. United States of America sums to 84 in the reduction cipher. So notice the time element has this gematria of 224. Again, the divisors of 84 sum to 224. Mathematical relationship we see used in rituals again and again. See my work on President Maduro and Trump's fallout on Trump's 224th day of his age this week. These numerical rituals are used again and again. The Revolutionary War had everything to do with 224 and 84. It's all covered in the book. As a reminder, the number 58, as in the year of release of the pilot, 58, also factors into the heavens above, where the moon, sun, and Saturn are located. Let us review. Zodiac sums to 58, celestial sums to 58, stars sums to 58, stars, the plural, sums to 58, solar cycle 58, calendar 58, Gregorian 58, Catholic Church 58. I should have wrote that Morning Star sums to 58 as well, which is true. Morning Star's 58. Tetragrammaton's 58. Keep in mind the Gregorian calendar is named after the Catholic Pope Gregory, in terms of the Catholic influence. Even better, this was the debut of what is the best-known science fiction show in the history of television, and science shares gematria of 58. This is also the same year NASA opened its doors, which would later put a man on the moon and change what the world knows about the field of science. Science, just the alphabetic order, 58. I should mention that the time element and science fiction share gematria as well. Even better, they connect to the name Apollo, the name of the eventual moon mission from NASA, as well as the name Catholic. Science fiction 71, the time element 71, Apollo 71, Catholic 71. For a bit more on the creator, Rod Serling, he has a name that is interesting in more ways than one, and also connecting to the year of the release of the pilot. If you decode his name with reduction and reverse reduction, you'll find it matches Freemasonry in both ciphers, meaning his name equates to 58 and 59. Equally as interesting, time element alone from the title of the pilot sums to 59 in reverse reduction. What is the 17th prime, where the number 17 connects to God, space, Mason, and kill? Not by chance, Sterling would die 17 years after the release of the pilot episode in 1975. And on a side note, think about the Challenger explosion and the Columbia disaster. 86, 2003, 17 years apart. Rod Serling equals 58. Rod Serling also 59, just like Freemasonry. Time element 59. Modern Freemasonry established in 1717. The word Mason equals 17. 59 is the 17th prime. And Hebrew Freemasonry also sums to 59. When the show released, Rod Serling was just 33 years old, about to turn 34 on Christmas Day, his birthday, being born December 25th, 1924. If you do the math, you'll notice the numerology of the date of birth connects to 61, not unlike the gematria of Christmas and time, as we learned in Chapter 9. In light of his Christmas birthday, it is also fascinating that the date the pilot episode debuted was the day leaving 37 days left in the year. This is a number connecting to Rod, December, and Christmas. At the same time, the number 37 is the 12th prime number, and in light of keeping time by counting 12 months and 12 hours in the morning and evening, another numerical relation is evident. As we decode, understand that the ritualistic release of The Twilight Zone is nothing out of the ordinary when it comes to Hollywood, which releases all of their works by the numbers, always in tribute to the work itself, as well as those who created it. His Christmas birthday would prove to be fateful later in his life, when he passed at the premature age of 50, the American number, if you recall. America sums to 50 with the alphabetic order like 50 states and 1,000,000 territories. Just as Christmas sums to 38 in reduction, same as cross when S is counted for 10, and death and ordinal, Sterling would die on a date with 38 numerology, June 28, 1975, as many before him and since have done just the same. When it comes to murder by the numbers, this is the number above all other numbers that shows its face time and time again. In Chapter 20, we will come to know this very well, perhaps too well. Chapter 20 is the chapter Murder by Numbers, which is the longest chapter in the book. So his date of death, date with 38 numerology, again, death, murder, killing, RIP, they all have gematria of 38, as does Christmas. He was born on Christmas. Think of the many celebrity deaths and riddles on Christmas just in recent times. On the subject, the second episode of The Twilight Zone was titled One for the Angels, and is about a man's passing from the earth to the world beyond. The man who dies is named Lou Bookman, having gematria of 38 in reduction. Before we calculate, you should know that every episode of the hit TV show is just the same, where the characters are named according to gematria that corresponds with the plot of the show. The next time you watch an episode, take a minute to decode, and you'll see just how clever the writers were. And if you apply this same knowledge to your many other favorite TV shows, movies, and stories, you'll see a number of writers have been doing just the same. Lou Bookman. If you've never seen The Twilight Zone, second episode. 38, the death number. As for the show being on CBS, the All-Seeing Eye Network, a phrase having ordinal gematria of 119, it should be noted that the name Lou Bookman equates to 119 as well. Of course, death, a common theme on television, is a concept that is used to control us and to program the mind's eye. Again, fear is the greatest controlling mechanism of all, and for most people, their greatest fear is death. If I can help you, truth seeker, I say have no fear, not even for death, because it is just part of the process, and cowardice is worse. There's Lou Bookman with the alphabetic order, 119, just like All-Seeing Eye in that cipher. Simple as it gets. Again, CBS with the All-Seeing Eye symbol. If you watch the episode, Lou tries to escape his fate, caused by a deal he made with Mr. Death, causing a little girl in his apartment building, neighbor Maggie, to be struck by a truck. As we know, in the Bible, the number 33 is a number of ritual sacrifice, and the age Jesus was put on the cross, the same man remembered on Christmas Day, or what was also Ron Serling's birthday. In this chapter on Murder by Numbers, In the chapter on murder by numbers, it will become clear how often this same number, 33, is used in ritualistic killing, oftentimes coded right along with the number 38, like Jesus at 33 on the cross, summing to 38. In this case, it connects to the gematria of Mr. Death, Maggie, and Lou. Don't forget the word name alone in ordinal also sums to 33. Mr. Death's 33, Maggie's 33, Lou's 33. In satanic gematria, Mr. Death sums to 314 as well, not unlike the digits of pi, 3.14. Think about pi, cycles, and circles, and now think about life and death in that context. To build on that thought, let's think deeper about Rod Serling passing at age 50 from a heart attack in light of being the creator of the Twilight Zone. If you write out circle with the alphabetic order, it sums to 50. Rod Serling dead at 50. Sacred also has that gematria of 50. The circle, very important to the occult, very important to magic. Continuing with the thought, let's examine the gematria of heart attack. By the way, gematria is the plural of gematria. Of heart attack as well as twilight, as in the Twilight Zone. What is decoded falls in line with what we have already learned about the geometry of the English language. Heart attack, twilight. Overlap, both summing to 108. Geometry also sums to 108. Circle. Pi. Heart attack also has gematria of 45 like twilight, same with geometry. Let us not forget that geometry sums to 108 forwards and backwards, and also shares gematria of a 45. At the same time, let us not forget that the plural of gematria, gematrio, shares gematria of 108 and 45 as well. Again, gematria means geometry in language. Even more, we should remember that the debut episode of his famous TV show was about time, and the sun is said to have the diameter of 108 Earths and be the diameter of 108 suns away in distance. And compounding the very mathematical death, he died 185 days after his 50th birthday, which was on Christmas 1974. You'll recall that in reverse ordinal, mathematics sums to 185. As for his last birthday being Christmas of 74, Killing and Cross have ordinal gematria of 74. And as we learned at the same time, subtraction has reverse reduction gematria of 74, as does One for the Angels, his second episode about passing to the next world. Already covered earlier in this book is the fact that Jesus, cross, Messiah, gospel, parables, cross, they all sum to 74 with the alphabetic order. And again, his birthday was Christmas Day, his last birthday in 74. One for the Angels, the name of that episode about death, 74. And on the subject of mathematics, Serling also died a span of 181 days from his 51st birthday, where Moon has reverse ordinal gematria of 51, similar to how conspiracy has reduction value of 51, reminding of the infamous Area 51. As for 181, it is the 42nd prime number. Recall, in ordinal, math sums to 42, and as you'll learn, it is a big number for the history of outer space, which is history that has been controlled by the Masonic Brotherhood since before the establishment of NASA in 58 up to the time of the writing of this book. At the same time, TV has ordinal gematria of 42, and so does Rod Serling when the septenary cipher is taken into account. TV, simple. T's the 20th letter, V's the 22nd. 20 plus 22, 42. Let us now decode the Twilight Zone to see how it meshes with the United States of America, states, colony, masonry, and Jesuit, as we learned about last chapter. As a reminder, each of those names equates to 84, reminiscent of Orwell's 1984. The Twilight Zone 84. Using that same cipher, United States of America is 84. Using the alphabetic order, Serling is 84. Consider that the divisors of the number 44 sum to 84, and the pilot for the show was about sending a man through space with the objective of reaching the moon, where again, the pilot launched the same year as NASA. Fittingly, space shares gematria of 44, matching the reduction gematria of Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, July 21st, 1969. The moon landing date was July 20th, but Armstrong put his foot on the moon for the first time July 21st. In the final days of the astrological sign of Cancer, the fourth sign and the lone sign summing to 44. Also, let us not overlook that the moon landing happened in 69, and the astrological symbol for Cancer resembles the number 69 itself, as shown. So again, think about that. Cancer is ruled by the moon. You get a moon landing in the astrological time of Cancer. Cancer equals 44, so does space, so does Armstrong. Outer space with the Chaldean cipher is also 44. Time element, the name of the episode from Twilight Zone about putting a man on the moon, in the septenary cipher is 44. Regarding Cancer being the fourth astrological sign and having Gematria 44, please know that in Sumerian Gematria, Masonic sums to 444. As a reminder, any word with an ordinal Gematria of 74, choosing the alphabetic order, will have a Sumerian Gematria of 444 because 74 times 6 is 444. So Masonic 444. Interestingly enough, in the Satanic cipher, astronaut is 444. Remember, Satanic Gematria sums to 666 when written out in the Satanic Gematria cipher. The Satanic Gematria cipher is simple. It just makes A 36, B 37, C 38. You just start at 36. 666 is the 36th triangular number. NASA's full name has Gematria 666 as well. Last year they had that Peggy Whitson stay 666 days in space. Moving on, it was Apollo 11 that put Armstrong on the moon, where 11 is the master number. The name Apollo 11 also connects to the date numerology. Armstrong touched down on the moon, July 21st, 1969. Let us examine both the dates, July 20th and July 21st. So Apollo 11 equals 53. Armstrong also has a Gematria value of 53. July 21st, 1969 was a date with a life lesson number of 53. So what a day to touch down. July 20th, 1969 was a date with 96 numerology, Freemasons 96. It was also a date with 115 numerology, Freemasons 115. Masonic, when you flip the alphabetic order around, is 115. In septenary, Apollo 11 equates to 35, the reflection of 53. July 21st, 1969 was also a date with numerology of 35, reminding of the pilot episode, date numerology from the Twilight Zone, about putting the first man on the moon as we covered. Apollo 11 with the septenary cipher, 35, NASA 35, July 21st, 1969, a date with 35 numerology. Just as good, using the Chaldean cipher, Apollo 11 sums to 58, the year the master plan began, the year NASA was established, 1958. Coming back to the number 53 for a moment, recall how it represents the word religion in reduction gematria. In septenary, Christianity also equates to 53. One of the most infamous moments in NASA's history was the Apollo 8 mission, where on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1968, the astronauts Bill Anders, Jim Lovell, and Frank Borman took turns reading from Genesis of the King James Bible, completing the first 10 verses. They did so while supposedly orbiting the moon, the first NASA mission to accomplish such a feat. There's multiple interesting angles here, but let us begin with the most obvious, the parallel between astronauts reading from Genesis while orbiting the lunar body for a highly Masonic agency, NASA, on a date with numerology at 33. So Genesis, the most pure cipher, 33. Bible, when you flip the alphabetic order around, 33. Big Bang, for the record, has that gematria 33. Lunar does. Astronaut. And again, the date they did this, a date with 33 numerology. It was also a date having numerology right for conspiracy, connecting to 123, as we learned about in Chapter 10, where we covered the relationship with conspiracy and the number 68 in relation to the CIA. Not unlike the year 1968, the same year the Stanley Kubrick film Space Odyssey 2001 was released. If you're not aware, many conspiracy researchers contend it was Kubrick who directed the government propaganda film that is the moon landing of July 20th and 21st, 1969. December 24th, 1968, the date of the reading from Genesis, date with 123 numerology. Conspiracy and mankind have that gematria of 123. The reason this Genesis reading moment is well remembered is because of the irony of it. Genesis states that the earth is divided from the heavens by the firmament, which is a barrier of water impenetrable. What the astronauts, NASA, and our federal government were showing people of the world with the Apollo mission is that this was not in fact true, and what was beyond was space. That said, if you look at the evidence that exists surrounding the legitimacy of NASA and the moon missions, all signs point to the fact that we have been lied to by our government by the numerological code, which we are now exposing. For starters, where was the technology then to broadcast a television signal from that great of a distance back to Earth so that people could watch as Neil Armstrong touched down on the lunar surface? Here in 2017, most of us can't even receive a clear cell phone signal, if you catch my drift. I don't want to elaborate too much on this topic because many great films and books have been written about all of the inconsistencies of the moon landing, from the technological limitations to the waving of the US flag and what breeze, to the prints left on the lunar surface by the moon lander and the video evidence shown to the general public and beyond, which you are more than welcome to research. Instead of going down that path, which has been traveled by many others, let us continue to decode, blazing our own trail, where the numerological evidence reveals the conspiracy more clearly than any other. Next up, why did they choose to read from Genesis with the Apollo 8 mission? Don't forget the 78th verse of Genesis as we decode, Genesis 3:2:2, the one about knowing good and evil and pertaining to the Kabbalah tree of life. And don't forget that it was the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry that established NASA either, no doubt with collaboration from the Jesuit order, which again, throughout history, along with the Catholic Church, has had a hand in scientific meddling and controlling people's understanding of this world because they want the mind's eye of the masses, which at the end of the day builds power and Vatican palaces. Genesis with the alphabetic order 78, Apollo 8 with the reverse reduction 78, Scottish Rite is 78, Jesuit is 78. On the subject of religion, please notice the overlap in Gematria with Christianity, science, and outer space. This is where the beauty of the layered ciphers reveals the encoding of the language in its totality and how the code is waged against the unknowing masses of the world. As we decode, know that ahead we'll uncover how NASA was established on July 29th, the day leaving 155 days left in the year. So Christianity, 155, science in Jewish Gematria is 155, outer space in the Kabbalah cipher is 155, in two of the Kabbalah ciphers. Freemasons, the plural is 155, Masonic rituals 155, astronaut in the Francis Bacon cipher is 155. Get NASA established on the day leaving 155 days left in the year. I should mention the name of the Apollo 8 mission also connects to moon as well as Scottish Rite. And again, this was the first mission to orbit the moon, at least so we're told. As we decode, keep in mind the Jews identify through the moon because it nearly disappears in the night sky only to return full, as the Jews claim has happened to them as a people over the course of history. Even better, please know that in the moon's orbit of the Earth, its center never travels above or below the coordinates of 28.5 degrees north and 28.5 degrees south of the Earth, which are a distance of 57 degrees apart. What was also the age, 57, for the inauguration of George Washington, the first recognized Scottish Rite Freemason president of the United States. Same with the inauguration ages of Adams, Jefferson, and Madison, all men who lived and died by the code as well. Don't lose sight of the fact it was JFK, the president, who first spoke about putting a man on the moon, as well as secret societies and monumental conspiracies before being killed in a conspiracy in the middle of Dealey Plaza named after a Scottish Rite Freemason. In our most pure cipher, Apollo 8's 57, same with Scottish Rite. Conspiracy, when you flip the alphabetic order around, is 57, so is outer space, so is spaceship. Space shuttle's 57 in the septenary cipher. Moon equals 57 just using the alphabetic order. Jews does as well. Again, the Jews identify through the moon. That's why, in part, their holidays are centered around the moon. And using the alphabetic order and rules of numerology, man on the moon is 57. The Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is known for being very Jewish. In fact, Hitler ordered it shut down in Germany before World War II because he said that is where all the Jews were conspiring against the working people of Germany. If we use the septenary and Chaldean ciphers, the Freemason connection shine through quite clearly. Recall, in reduction, Freemason sums to 42, and in Sumerian as well as Satanic Gematria, the G in Freemason logo also represents this number. The G that sits beneath the compass set at 47 degrees. Apollo 8 with the septenary cipher, 42. Freemason, 42. Outer space, 42. Apollo 8, also 47 with the Chaldean cipher, like the degrees on the compass. On the subject of Freemasonry, and specifically the Scottish Rite, let us now examine the date of establishment for NASA, which was July 29th, 1958, which, as a reminder, is the day leaving 155 days left in the year, a number we just uncovered. The date numerology for the establishment pops in more ways than one. It was a date with 113 numerology, Scottish equals 113 with the alphabetic order, Moon equals 113 in Frank Baconis. It was a date with 59 numerology, Freemasonry 59 in Hebrew and in English. It was a date with 95 numerology. It was a date with 41 numerology. It was a date with 147 numerology. We'll talk about a list of 147 ahead. 147 has a whole lot to do with space. The Challenger, which exploded, had a lot to do with 147, as we'll get to. July 29th was also a date with 36 numerology. Again, 666 is the 36th triangular number. National Aeronautics and Space Administration equals 666. Beginning with the date numerology of 113, this is a number representing Scottish in ordinal gematria, as in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. As we just mentioned, the Scottish Rite is known for being the most Jewish branch of Freemasonry, and in the Talmud, there is a very specific verse numbered Baba Kama 113a about it being okay for Jews to lie to Goyim as long as it is in a legal setting, which is pretty much everywhere because this is a world of laws. That verse from the Talmud is as follows, Baba Kama 113a. Jews may use lies to circumvent a Gentile, which again is a non-Jew, just like a Goyim. When you start to consider the reading from Genesis by the numbers, this becomes all the more interesting. Very quickly, let me show you a short list of words with gematria of 113 that pertain to dishonesty. Also, if you're not aware, this is a number that the film studio Pixar and Disney, as well as others, actively code in their films. This is a number that film studios Pixar and Disney, as well as others, actively code in their films. Keep your eyes peeled and you'll see just how common it is. So all of these things sum to 113. The alphabetic order, mainstream's 113. Same with dishonest, same with not true, same with not factual, disinfo, perjury, fiction, green screen, George Lucas, bullshit, infidelity, perverted, divorce, politics, fake reality, dream world, illusions, Titanic, iceberg. There's more, but I'll save them for you to uncover. In the case of Titanic, if you're not aware, a fiction novel, Futility, Wreck of the Titan, was published by Morgan Robertson in 1898, 14 years before the Titanic sunk after hitting an iceberg late April 14th, 1912, and submerging in the Atlantic April 15th, not unlike the death of Lincoln, who was shot late April 14th and died early April 15th. In the storybook, the Titan is the largest ship ever built that sinks on its first sail after hitting an iceberg. Sound familiar? If you are not aware of the truth about the Titanic, it was not the Titanic that sunk that day, but its sister ship, the Britannic, which was built just prior and damaged months earlier after colliding in port, and purposefully sunk in an act of insurance fraud, killing 3 of the world's richest men, who were all strong opponents of the central bank, now the Federal Reserve. That was in the works by the powerful Jewish banking cartel and political force in the United States and Europe. The 3 men killed, who all fiercely opposed the central bank, were John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Macy's co-owner Isidor Straus. On the same ship was supposed to be the Jew J.P. Morgan, who owned the financial rights to the Britannic and Titanic, but he got off the ship at the last minute because he was feeling ill. Don't believe me, truth seeker? Look it all up. This is how the Zionists roll, and this is what they have done all throughout history. They are killers and they are liars, and they love to make movies about their lies, stealing even more money from who they call gullible goyim, who aren't the best at keeping track of history, the facts, or the ongoing pattern of Jewish wrongdoing, which is not anti-Semitic, it is just stating facts. And please recognize, one of the men killed, Strauss, was a Jew as well, so I am not condemning the whole religion, but I am condemning the many within who are guilty of so much that is wrong in the world because of their illicit behavior and dishonesty. And for one more kicker, and to bring us back to 113, the Federal Reserve was established December 23rd, 1913, 617 days after the sinking of the Titanic, where 617 is the 113th prime number. I wish I could say that was a coincidence. For a few more facts, here is the gematria of iceberg in light of April 15th, Zionist and Judaism. For good measure, we can review theater just as well, since one of the greatest grossing films by the very Jewish Hollywood was made about it, of course titled Titanic. And keep in mind, it's the lies that are Titanic. Truth seeker. So notice, iceberg, April 15th. Again, that's the date Titanic officially submerged. Zionist, Judaism, and theater. They all sum to 77. Same with power. Same with United States, the American meridians, the 77th meridian. Another 113 from history pertaining to science I would like to expose before getting back on point is Piltdown Man, discovered in the UK and taught about in classrooms and universities for 41 years before being admitted as a complete fraud that was known to be a false find from the get-go. If you've never heard of Piltdown Man, it was a paleoanthropological hoax that was used to legitimize the theory of evolution and was also argued as proof that white people were the most evolved race on the planet, superior to the others. It was taught within academia from its discovery in 1912 to its exposure in 1953. Not by coincidence, Piltdown sums to 113, as well as 41, the latter number being the length of time the scientific hoax lasted, proving that even when it was exposed, it was all part of the ongoing agenda of deceit by the numbers. I don't know about you, Truth Seeker, but this stuff makes my blood boil, especially knowing that it is still going on today on multiple fronts, from space fraud to cancer fraud and more. The man who discovered Piltdown Man was Charles Dawson, a name not too far off from Charles Darwin, the man credited with the theory of evolution, which is more bogus bullshit based in nothing substantial. Take a look around. Do you see anyone evolving? Animals and insects adapting to man-made poisons polluting the earth is about as close as you can come. But that is called adaptation, not evolution, which is part of our God-given ability found in all living things. Notice they can't find a missing link. Well, I guess they just didn't find the missing link this year. And if you follow my work, I put out a video on that. But again, it's all reported by this code. Notice they can't find a missing link, and it's because it doesn't exist. As for Lucy, once considered to be the missing link before being retracted due to the decoding of the story of the archaeological find, which is by the same Freemasonic code found surrounding Piltdown Man. One more time, this is how history repeats itself, by the fraudulently forced numbers of the Masonic elitists who don't care a shred about truth or what is righteous. At the same time, all I see taking place are mass extinctions and people becoming stupider by the day, which is called devolving. And please understand, the reason for all of this false science is to pull man away from God and spirituality, while leading them into darkness, lies, and deceit, which is now commonplace throughout the world. 'Tis the plan of the synagogue of Satan, which must be stopped in its tracks. On the subject of evolution and Charles Dawson and Charles Darwin, let's do a little more decoding. Keep in mind, Darwin was born February 12th, 1809, and died April 19th, 1882, 66 days before his 73rd birthday, where Charles sums to 66 normal and sacrifice sums to 73 in the same method. Even better, his remembered work, Origin of Species, equates to 66 in septenary. Darwin's name also sums to 33. His date of death was a date with 33 numerology. I should mention that many people have been murdered by the numbers in history due to consuming arsenic, a deadly poison that is the 33rd element on the periodic table. In reduction gematria, arsenic also equates to 33. Think about the 33-day Pope. they believe he was murdered with arsenic, dead in his sleep. When you write out 33, it also sums to 66, like how Charles is 66, like how he died 66 days from his birthday. Charles, mankind, origin of species, all 66. Evolution has the Gematria 47, as does Lucy. I should have mentioned as does Ethiopia, where Lucy was discovered. Charles Dawson sums to 74. Charles Robert Darwin, also 74. 74, 47 reflections of each other. Charles Robert Darwin, his full name, also has Gematria 96, like Freemason. Again, Masonic 74, 47 degrees on the Masonic compass. Now back to the story of the Scottish Rite in space by the numbers, a frontier where it's easier to keep the lies in check, with the you-know-who's in control and treating the world as a stage. The next portion of the date numerology from NASA's establishment that intrigues is the number 59, which again is the 17th prime. As we have learned, both space and Mason sum to 17, and Freemasonry totals 59 in both English and in Hebrew. After that is the reflection of 59, which is 95, and as we learned, a number connected to the birthday of the Jesuit order, as well as the number of the beast, 666. On the subject of the number of the beast, let's decode what NASA's full name is. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Not by chance it sums to 666, corresponding with the tilt of the Earth, according to some sources, which is said to be at a 23.4 degree angle, or 66.6 degrees off center. The full name, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, 666. When you write out 666, it sums to 95. Get NASA established on a date with 95 numerology. On the subject of 666, in recent NASA news, they announced on April 24th, 2017, a new agency record was going to be achieved, keeping a 57-year-old astronaut who had set a record logging 57 spacewalk hours in space for 666 consecutive days. Again, don't forget, outer space is 57, conspiracy, Scottish Rite. Let us examine the headline from that day, April 24th, which is the 114th day of the year, then pay mind to how the number 114 connects to history as well as astronaut. Keep in mind, in numerology terms, 114 also breaks down to 6, what is the digit repeated in 666. And for the record, the reason I can't get my book printed is because I use news headlines. No one will print it because the news headlines are in here. They say this violates the copyright of the news agencies, which to me seems like a joke. So April 24th, all news outlets reported the same story on the same date, the 114th day of the year, that Peggy Whiteson was going to be spending 666 days in space. Astronaut, when you flip the alphabetic order around, is 114. History, the alphabetic order is 114. An astronaut making history. Recall 666 is the 36th triangular number, and as we noted above, that NASA was established July 29th, a date having numerology of 36. Also related, in septenary, astronaut sums to 36, as well as the last name of the astronaut Whiteson in reduction and reverse reduction gematria. So astronaut Whiteson, all 36, 666 days. Numbers that have this strong relationship. Funny they chose a woman to do it when 666 is considered to be the number of a man. Keep in mind this story came in the time of the many transgender headlines that the Zionist media is pushing as a way to emasculate the men of this world even further than they already have been. Beyond that, the full name of the astronaut, Peggy Whiteson, has a direct connection to the number 666 as well. As we decode, recall that if you write out 666 and the number of a man, they both total 156. In this case, Peggy Whiteson sums to 156 as well. Not by chance, Peggy would return to Earth on September 3rd, 2017. That is a date that can be written 9/3, a lot like 93, the number representing Saturn, the keeper of time, where we began the chapter. Astronaut Peggy Whiteson breaks NASA's record for longest time spent in space. It's also interesting to note that upon her return to Earth, all mainstream articles published that same stat, saying she was in space from November 7th, 2015, until returning to Earth September 3rd, 2017, which was reported on September 3rd as being 665 days, one shy of the number 666. For anyone who takes the time to put in the two dates on a date calculator, you will see that they are 666 days apart, not 665, and it makes one wonder why they changed their reporting from 666 days, which they boasted about April 24th, a deliberate lie told from the UK to the USA and all sources that wrote about it. And anyone can go back and verify all of this. At first, they were reporting it was going to be 666 days, which it was. But then when they did the final story, they put 665. And I'll remind, I had a video on a popular channel at the time that had a lot of views on NASA and 666 and all of this stuff. You know, that video had more than 100,000 views, so the word was getting out there. Perhaps the reason the media was telling more fibs was because on April 24th, 2017, I created a viral video showing the Gematria NASA, summing to 666 and the greater significance of the number in light of the reporting in the mainstream media of that day. Sadly, that video no longer exists because the G-men at Google deleted my entire channel June 28, 2017, 187 days after my home was crashed into on Christmas Eve. December 24th, 2016, a date I was threatened for, only after being threatened to stop exposing this code or else. Code that I continue to expose because I won't stop until the day these people are brought to justice. As for the date Peggy took off, November 7th, 2015, it was a date right for making history. Let us examine why. 11/7/15 was a date with 33 numerology. Peggy equals 33, history 33, astronaut also 33. The return home date was right for astronaut history in more ways than one as well. Astronaut also shares Gematria 39. The date was September 3rd, 3/9. Peggy's also 39, so was history. Consider the date can be written as 9/3, similar to 93, representative of the distance from the Earth to the Sun in millions of miles, and the day she departed, November 7th, was the day leaving 54 days left in the year, corresponding with the ordinal Gematria of Sun, summing to 54. The date numerology of September 3rd, 2017, when she returned to Earth, also has this second connection to history. Recall that 227 is the 49th prime, and the ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry has Gematria of 227 in the reverse reduction method, our number connecting to pi and going well with the geometric Freemason logo. So the math's on the screen. Earth, by the way, in the satanic cipher is 227. And again, 22 divided by 7 gives you pi. Pi cycles, circles the Earth, seasons, time. You have to admit, altogether, it truly is well measured. Speaking of which, the Freemason logo, as we know, has a compass creating a 47-degree angle because each leg is kicked out at 23.5 degrees, same as the degrees on the tropics that measure the solstices. Now notice the satanic Gematria of Peggy in light of the measurement fact. Peggy in satanic Gematria is 235. Again, this number that has a lot to do with time. For a related point that you should know, May 23rd, which can be expressed 23/5, is the 143rd day of the year. Below, notice the Gematria of Scottish Rite of Freemasonry with the reverse reduction method equating to 143. And keep in mind, the name Mason is sort of like May Sun, as in the sun in May. And with regards to the sun, which goes in cycles and circles, consider circle sums to 143 in Hebrew Gematria. In history, May 23rd has been a very special date. Most recently, in 2017, the people of the UK lost more of their rights to the New World Order agenda on it. We'll get to that in the chapter on false flags in public places not too far ahead. Also, in light of Peggy spending 666 days in space, per the Miscounting News, we should recall the motto of the Freemasons that are represented by the compasses in their logo. The motto is, circumscribe our desires and keep our passions within due bounds, having Gematria of 666. If they think they're keeping their passions within due bounds, it's time for them to be regulated, and that is exactly what we're going to do. For another important point on the name Peggy, it has gematria of 119 in the Frank Baconis cipher. And the day she returned to Earth, September 3rd, is the day leaving 119 days left in the year, the number connecting to all-seeing eye and more. Also, as a reminder, in Chapter 4, you learned how Saturn has gematria of 93 and 119. Ahead, you'll learn how those numbers were both highly significant to September 11th attack, as well as the murders of Peter Tosh and Bob Marley, among other things. Then soon, Truth Seeker, we're going to have to go get up and stand up for our rights. Peggy, 119, Frank Baconis. She returns on the day leaving 119 days left in the year. As for her full name, it brings us back to the establishment of NASA, which was July 29, 1958, a date having numerology of 94, as covered. The full name of the astronaut, who in all likelihood is nothing more than a TV actress, think about how they can create realistic space scenes in TV shows and movies, is Peggy Annette Whiteson, a name summoned to 94 in the reduction method. On a related note, the current private space company funded by Elon Musk that uses NASA's facility, SpaceX, also shares this gematria. Not too far off, so does Planet. SpaceX sums to 94. Planet sums to 94. For a refresher, let us revisit how the number 94 is connected to Freemason, conspiracy, and a host of other related things, especially pertinent to outer space. If you write out 94, it sums to 147. Remember how we called the death of George Herbert Walker Bush at age 94 before the end of November this year? And he ended up dying 147 days after his son George W. Bush's birthday. HW died at 94, 147 days after W's birthday. President of the United States is 147, so is U.S. President. Anyway, 94, 147, Freemason, 147, conspiracy, 147, 50 states, 147, America's 147, 4th of July, 147, U.S. President, 147, President of the United States, 147, outer space, 147, spaceship, 147, knowledge, 147, Kabbalah, 147, Big Bang, 147, Big Bang, also 94, and Francis Bacon. I don't know why I forget to put the RO there. It's the reverse ordinal method. As we decode, think of the last time you saw an astronaut on television. Did they have a Don't Panic t-shirt on? NASA loves to dress their space actors up with that slogan because it is from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, an outer space-related story and film that pays big respects to Freemasonry. And because it is gematria perfect. Don't lose sight of the fact that the same people who are running Hollywood and publishing New York Times bestsellers are the same people in control of your nightly news. Don't panic equals 147. Just the same as the word Freemason, don't panic equates to the number 42 in reduction gematria and 96 in ordinal as well. If you are familiar with the story, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the number 42 is part of the mystery, which we will demystify. Before doing so, you must know that the author of the same fiction novel, Douglas Adams, no doubt a Freemason, tells the tale of an alien race programming a computer called Deep Thought that formulates the answer to the question posed: life, the universe, and everything. In response, the computer comes up with the answer, 42. Let us do a little decoding to see why. We will use reverse reduction gematria. Life, the universe, and everything sums to 147. Notice the name of the computer, Deep Thought, that spits out the answer 42, and also has reduction gematria 42, as well as a host of other related words. Deep Thought 42, outer space 42, spaceship 42, Freemason 42, history 42, knowledge 42, Big Bang 42, capital G in the Mason logo 42. G is also 42 in satanic gematria. To be thorough, let's take apart the name of the computer, Deep Thought, with a few more related ciphers. You'll notice the gematria 57 connecting to outer space and conspiracy, among other things, as well as a 58 connecting to NASA's establishment year. Freemasonry and the rest of the long list of 58 you should know well. You'll also observe the number 181, what is the 42nd prime, the most recognized number in the film, and again, directly associated with the computer. As we decode, consider how much fiction existing and our world is in such perfect alignment with what we are told is reality. And you might be aware, Hollywood has been used over the past century as a way of cluing in those with eyes to see to the truths of the world in a mocking fashion. So Deep Thought 57, number we covered well. Deep Thought 58, another number that we covered well. NASA not established in 58 by accident. And Deep Thought also 181, the 42nd prime. For even more Freemason coding, let's take apart the title of the film. As we decode, recall the list of 139 gematria we uncovered last chapter, connecting to America and those who are truly in control of this nation, the same people in control of Hollywood. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in reverse reduction is 139. Galaxy in the Frank Baconis cipher is 139. Freemasonry with the reverse alphabetic order. No, that's an error on my part. It should just be Freemasonry is 139 with the regular alphabetic order. So it shouldn't say reverse. It's a mistake. America is 139 with the reverse alphabetic order. NASA is 139 with Frank Baconis. Again, a program controlled by Freemasonry. And typically when I do my decodes, I just stick to the 4 base ciphers. And earlier in the book, I emphasized that you really only need the 4 base ciphers to see through what's going on. But when you learn these other related ciphers, you can just see how much more is encoded and how layered it is. Speaking of mocking, check out this headline from 1996. Recall, the divisors of the number 42 sum to the number 96. This headline and the included excerpts are from the UK's Independent. Understand, every single day of our lives, the media is contriving nonsense in the news to deceive us, to confuse us, and to make our heads spin without apology. Thus, the media is something that should have absolutely zero credibility with everyone, and I pray to God this book reaches the hands of every news-consuming person in the world so that they can wake up to the abuse they are tolerating on a daily basis. So this article is from 1996, was written on the date of November 8th, 1996. Yes, the answer to the universe really is 42. And again, in 96, Freemason 42 and 96. The divisors of 42 sum to 96. So this is from the excerpt. In slightly less time, 2 years, a team at the Cavendish Laboratory has managed the same feat using a new technique to estimate the value of the Hubble constant. This measures how quickly objects in the universe are receding from each other, a natural outcome of the Big Bang that created the universe. Dr. Richard Saunders, who led the research, sounded a trifle abashed by the result. We have taken 2 measurements for the constant, and the average of them is, well, it's 42, he said. But he insisted this is entirely fortuitous, though thousands of fans of the Hitchhiker novels might disagree. The name Dr. Saunders even sums to 42, just using the reduction cipher. As for the Hubble constant that is mentioned in reverse reduction gematria, the name equates to 96, matching the year of the article. Don't overlook the mention of the Big Bang either, which we just calculated the gematria of 42. For a bit more mockery, let us read on from the same article. Here, the author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, claims that they just chose the number 42 for its amusing qualities. I highly doubt the choice of words was coincidental. Here's why. Notice amusing qualities sums to 235. Numbers related to the Masonic compass, which surrounds the G, which symbolizes 42. So Mr. Adams said yesterday that when he wrote the novel 20 years ago, he chose the number especially for its pathetic nature. I wanted a nice, ordinary number, one that you wouldn't mind taking home and introducing to your parents. But later he realized that the choice was no accident when he was working for the John Cleese's film company, Video Arts. As a prompt borrower, he and the other writers picked 42 for its amusing qualities as a punchline. Freemasons, notorious liars, because they have to cover up their secrets. They're a secret society. So when they get questioned on things, they either have to have no comment or come up with a bogus reason. One more time, there are 23.5 degrees on each leg of the Freemason compasses. Speaking of which, he died a Mason's death by the code May 11, 2001, on his 62nd day of being 49 years old, relatively young. Like Rod Serling, his cause of death was a heart attack. Consider the date May 11th can be expressed as 11/5, something like 115, where we learned Freemasons and ordinal gematria equates to 115. As for it being his 62nd day of his respective age, the word Mason in ordinal sums to 62, a special number from the Torah where there are 62 mentions of the garden in the NIV. At the same time, sacrifice has reverse reduction gematria 62, and the Torah is full of sacrifice. In case you missed where I snuck these facts in earlier, we'll revisit the gematria points so the significance of this number 62 sticks with you. It is one that is extremely important. Mason equals 62, so does Torah, so does Elohim, so does Garden of Eden. Again, 62 mentions of the garden in the New International Version Bible. Don't forget, the entire code comes from the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. 5 with the alphabetic order when written out sums to 42. Also important, about his passing on May 11th, the same day Bob Marley was murdered, it is the day that can be expressed as 5/11, something like the number 511, which represents Saturn in Jewish gematria. Saturn, as mentioned, is associated with time, death, and judgment, and its astrological symbol, having the scythe as part of its makeup, is where the Grim Reaper's scythe is derived from. For the record, Saturn also sums to 42 in the reverse reduction method. It's also interesting to note that Douglas Adams was born March 11th, a date that can be expressed 11/3, not unlike the number 113, connecting to fiction as well as dishonest. Maybe someone should have told him it was a sin to lie, and then he wouldn't have signed up with the gang of long-nosed tyrants that tell no truths and off their minions by the numbers if they were flies on the wall. Sin 42, sin also 147. Moving on, let's switch gears and talk about the 2 NASA-related disasters over the years, as both have been by the numbers, no different than the rest of NASA's history from the start to the present. We'll begin by decoding the word disaster. Please notice the gematria of 58 and how it corresponds with NASA's year of establishment. Disaster, 58. Don't forget the word 2 also shares ordinal gematria of 58. And to date, there have been 2 disasters, both having a number in common. So disaster and 2, 58. The most recent tragedy was that of the 113th mission, a number that should have your eyeballs popping out based on what we learned earlier. That was February 1st, 2003, the 32nd day of the year, also connecting to the gematria of disaster as well as America, where both summed to 32 in reduction. And sadly, the tyrants at the top, they could never cook up enough tragedies by the numbers for the people of this nation. It was also a date with numerology at 26, connecting to space and kill, as well as Mason and God. We've well established who likes to play God at this point. In the history books, the fateful events of this day are known as the Columbia disaster and the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster. Both titles are interesting. Let us decode, starting with the shorter. Columbia disaster in the Francis Bacon cipher sums to 223. Recall, the number 223 connects to Masonic and the Synagogue of Satan. It is also the 48th prime number, where words having gematria of 48 include evil, propaganda, and hoax. Throughout history, this gang of tyrants has murdered people for the purpose of the psychological toll it will take on the general public, as well as hoax deaths to create the same impact. As for the longer title, in the septenary cipher, the name points directly to death. As you will learn in the chapter on murder by numbers, the number 118 is a big one, connecting to many famous celebrity premature exits. Consider the word cancer also has reverse ordinal gematria of 118, and as we know, cancer kills. Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, 118 in septenary. Death, 118 in Jewish gematria. Also interesting, the name Columbia alone has gematria of 76, syncing with blood sacrifice, which this very well may have been. Columbia, 76. Blood sacrifice, 76. In terms of blood sacrifice, it also has gematria of 86, which was the year of the first disaster, 1986, 17 years earlier. Let us not forget that in reduction gematria, Mason, God, and space and kill equate to 17 as well. I commonly call the number 86 the symbol number, and the 1986 Challenger explosion was heavily symbolic because many people were watching on live television when it happened. Personally, it was something my mother would bring up often when I was a child, and what a shame it was. I know she wasn't the only one. Symbol, triangle, and pyramid all sum to 86 using the alphabetic order. The most famous symbol in the world is the Eye of Providence, as shown on the US dollar bill. It too has a reduction gematria of 86. Eye of Providence. The 86 disaster happened January 28, 1986, 147 weeks and 1 day after its first mission, which was April 4th, 1983. Should be noted that April 4th is a fateful day in history. On April 4th, 1841, the first president to die in office passed, 1 month into his term, which was William Henry Harrison. On April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. On April 4th, 1973, the World Trade Centers opened. Of course, in ordinal gematria, the word kill sums to 44, and those towers were absolutely killed. As for the Challenger disaster happening on the 28th day of January, it is interesting to note that more recent tragedy in 2003 was the 28th mission for the Columbia shuttle. Of course, both Kill and NASA share gematria of 28, as does Mason. Kill, NASA, Mason, space as well. Space is also 28. For another parallel, in the 86 explosions, the shuttle disintegrated at the 73rd second, which is fascinating for 3 reasons. First, if you write it out in minutes and seconds, it is presented as a minute 13, 113, not unlike it being the 113th mission ending in disaster, and our number of mainstream dishonesty. Second, the word sacrifice in ordinal gematria equates to 73, and third, NASA sums to 73 in reverse ordinal. I should also mention that the word perfect has reduction gematria of 28 and ordinal gematria of 73. To the psychopaths, it is hard to say for certain what they see as perfect, but perhaps to them, these 2 incidents were perfect tragedies. If you can stomach a bit more, the 2 tragedies also have geometry overlap. What I mean is best explained by decoding Columbia disaster and Challenger disaster. As we decode the symmetrical names, consider the first explosion was during takeoff and the other was just before landing. Challenger disaster and Columbia disaster both sum to 108, just like the word geometry. In the case of the Challenger disaster, it has Chaldean gematria of 58 as well. The date numerology of the Challenger incident also produces familiar results. The numbers 53, 35, and 115 all show up, as well as 134. Starting with the number 134, it is connected to disaster throughout history, and you'll learn about why in the chapter on September 11th. If you watch the Hollywood flick The Martian, you'll notice the base the main character is living in explodes on the 134th day of his time on the planet, and not coincidentally. Store this number away for later. Regarding 35, that connects the ordinal gematria of NASA as well as I, and this was most certainly an incident that impacted the mind's eye of the masses. At the same time, both 35 and 53 connect to takeoff, when the Challenger exploded. As for the number 115, it connects to the ordinal gematria of Freemasons as well as the reverse ordinal gematria of killing. Killing 115 kills 28. With regards to the 35 date numerology, takeoff sums to 38 as well. 53 date numerology, takeoff also 53. NASA in its history also had a scare with Apollo 13, the shuttle that launched at 1313 on April 11, 1970. Recall, NASA's date of establishment had numerology of 41, the 13th prime number. Don't overlook how that date can be written as 11/4, similar to 114, matching the gematria of astronaut, as covered earlier. It can also be expressed 4/11, not unlike 411, and in satanic gematria, spaceship equates to 411. It was the explosion of an oxygen tank that caused the mission to nearly end in death. Notice oxygen tank has reverse ordinal gematria of 134, which we still have much to learn about regarding the number, one that is always faithful. According to the legend, because the crew was able to remain calm under pressure, they made it back to Earth in 6 days. Don't forget the number 13 is the 6th prime. True to form, Hollywood made a movie about it, starring Tom Hanks. It released fittingly on a date with 33 numerology plus more, June 30th, 1995. In light of the numerology of 33, I should mention that Apollo 13 launched from Kennedy Space Center. Again, Kennedy sums to 33, like Hollywood, like actor, like Tom, like astronaut, like history. June 30th also had the date connection to number 36. It is also the 181st day of the year. Again, 181 is the 42nd prime. Because of the disaster, Apollo 13 went off course, and to date is the space mission to travel furthest into space. This is interesting because space has gematria of 91, what is the 13th triangular number. Apollo 13 also returned on a date with 91 numerology, April 17th, 1970. The math for the date numerology is as follows: 4 plus 17 plus 70, 70 equals 91. And again, 91, when you add 1 through 13, it equals 91. This was Apollo 13, which launched at 1313. And things like that, I mean, that should just make people go, wow, what is it about numbers? Why do they need to launch Apollo 13 at 1313 military time? Once upon a time, it was these things that helped me see that numbers were important to people in high places. Let us close this point about Apollo 13 with the fact that in English extended gematria, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry sums to 2,197, which is the product of 13 times 13 times 13, or 13 cubed. And to further illustrate the point about how NASA has made its news by the numbers, from its inception up to the present, it was reported that on Tuesday, November 28, 2017, the day leaving 33 days left in the year, that Voyager 1, summing to 33 in reverse reduction, had to turn on its thrusters for the first time since 1980, 37 years earlier. Consider this news was first reported in the mainstream on December 2nd, 2017, the month having reduction gematria at 37. What else is fascinating about the number 37 is that when you write out 37 as a word, it sums to 57. The number we learned connected to outer space in a number of ways. Adding to the comedy, they said Voyager 1 was 13 billion miles from Earth when the boosters were successfully reignited. Also worth mentioning is that the date it was reported, December 2nd, was a Saturday, the day named after Saturn, and like Saturn, Voyager 1 sums to 93 in ordinal gematria. At the same time, Voyager has reduction gematria of 39, corresponding with the date November 28th, or 11 plus 28 equals 39. To stop picking on NASA, let us recalibrate and take aim on SpaceX. Of course, this private company, reportedly owned and operated by Elon Musk, uses NASA's launch sites, and also, like NASA, makes all of its news by the numbers, and always in alignment with Musk's birthday. The most notable of the news to date came on February 6, 2018, where the Falcon Heavy was launched, said to be the most powerful rocket to take flight in the history of space. Consider space sums to 26 in reduction gematria, when S is counted for 10, not unlike the date, which can be expressed as 2/6 or 6/2, and which was also a date with numerology of 26. Also noteworthy, Elon Musk sums to 26 in septenary and 35 in Chaldean. At the same time, the name Musk sums to 26 in reverse reduction, and Elon totals 62 in reverse ordinal. Continuing with the connections to Elon, his first name has reduction gematria of 19 and ordinal gematria of 46, connecting to the numerology of the date of launch. Making matters even more interesting, the Falcon Heavy took flight 223 days after his 46th birthday, which was June 28, 2017. As you know, that number connects to Masonic in Jewish gematria. The launch also came 142 days after his 47th birthday, or 142 days before his 47th birthday, where 42, when written out, sums to 142 in ordinal, and 42 is the number of outer space, as well as Freemason. You could say his 47th birthday was a span of 143 days away, connecting to Scottish Rite of Freemasonry and reverse reduction. Now, let us get to the most important storyline of all for this event. Two standout details of the launch were that Elon Musk was launching one of his Tesla automobiles into the great unknown with the rocket, And the second, the automobile would be playing the David Bowie song Space Oddity, which was recorded June 20th, 1969, a month before the moon landing. Consider June 20th can be expressed as 6/20 and equates to 6 plus 20 equals 26. What made this detail all the more fascinating is the fact that David Bowie had died January 10th, 2016, which was 2 years and 27 days before the launch. As you know, 22 divided by 7 gives you the approximation of pi having to do with cycles and circles. At the same time, ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry has a reverse reduction gematria of 227. And most important of all, this event, 227, is the 49th prime number. This detail is huge because David Bowie, Space Odyssey, and Falcon Heavy, the name of the rocket, each equate to 49 in reduction gematria. The purpose of the launch was said to be a step in achieving the mission of putting a man on the planet Mars. In light of the Tesla automobile being part of the Falcon Heavy mission, you don't want to overlook that planet Mars and Nikola Tesla share ordinal gematria of 119, the all-seeing eye number. And on the subject of the number, I should note that in 2015, Forbes reported Elon Musk was worth $11.9 billion. Now, to close this chapter, the other thing you must know is that the entire history of space, even outside of the United States, has been by the numbers. Remember, Freemasonry is a worldwide organization, and this code of letters, numbers, and dates is Masonic. To make the point, let us examine Yuri Gagarin, the Russian, said to be the first man in space. That happened on April 12, 1961, the 102nd day of the year, in the Vostok 1 mission, where Yuri reportedly orbited the Earth in precisely 108 minutes, the geometry number. Not by coincidence, Vostok 1 equates to 102 in ordinal gematria, again on the 102nd day of the year. Vostok 1 also has gematria 33. The mission date had 33 numerology. Perfect. Pointing to the Freemasons was the date of April 12, 1861, having numerology of 96. This is a typo. Man, I don't know how anyway, it should say 1961. 1961. Yeah, it should say plus 19 because this math, yeah, it is a date with 96 numerology, but yeah, I don't know why I was writing the 18s on the page. 4 plus 12 plus 19 plus 61 is 96. Recall the divisors of 42, the outer space number is summed to 96. In this case, the surname of the astronaut, Gagarin, also equates to 42 using reverse reduction. Gagarin, gematria of 42. Let us do a bit more decoding on his name to see what else pops out. His name has the 113 encoding. Talked about that in light of Columbia and Challenger. 57, the big outer space conspiracy number. 39, big astronaut number. Consider Yuri Gagarin was born March 9th, which can be expressed as 3/9 or 9/3, like how astronauts 39. That is the 68th day of the year, connecting to his name, solar system, and his year of death. His name, Yuri Gagarin, 68, solar system 68. The name Yuri alone also has standout gematria. In the base ciphers, Yuri sums to 28 in reduction, 26 in reverse reduction, 73 in ordinal, and 35 in reverse ordinal. That is similar to how NASA sums to 28 in reverse reduction, 35 in ordinal, and 73 in reverse ordinal. Also fascinating about the man is that he was born March 9th, 1934, a date with numerology of 47, and he died at the young age of 34, March 27th, 1968, on the 87th day of 68, which was a leap year, typically the 86th day. Consider Russia has ordinal gematria of 87. As for him passing at age 34, the number connects to murder in reduction, and more importantly, 139, the number symbolizing Freemasonry in ordinal, is the 34th prime. Makes one wonder if he was 86th to help keep Masonic secrets. So that's the end of that chapter. Chapter 13 is about all the predictive programming for Trump's rigged election, broadcast many decades in advance. And, the book's just packed with information. And apparently it has some minor typos. Guess it's easy for the brain to get tongue twisted with numbers, but all the information is accurate, and even like the minor typos, you can figure out what I actually meant to put. Obviously, not 1861 for the space mission. So we'll leave it there for now, Truth Seeker. If you do want to check out the book, go to Etsy and search Letters and Numbers. This one with the bright green cover. Come read the reviews. Got 135 very positive reviews. I like this review from a fellow somebody that knows something about teaching. They wrote, "I would like to say thank you, Zach, for everything that you have done and have had to sacrifice through the year to get this book wrote. I'm very thankful that you took the time and effort to write this book. My wife was a teacher for 29 and a half years at the very first and only school she ever worked at. She started August of '89, and she just retired as of January 1st. Tell you this because she is also very impressed with the way the book was written and with the information in it. We both pray that God blesses you and your family and whatever our futures may hold." So a lot of nice reviews from people. Gordon says, "Excellent book, very well written." Philip says he's only 26 pages in, but he's loving it so far. Barry says it's need to know knowledge. Ruben says the most significant book in 2018, hands down. Christine says very special book. Thanks, Christine. Nicole had trouble getting it at first, but I took care of her right away. And anyway, come read the reviews. It's only $5 to get this entire book. It did take 5 years to write. It's packed with information. Everyone deserves this information. Wish more people in the truth community would talk about it. This is the need to know knowledge. All right, Truth Seeker, until next time.